go for it, Despots.
Okay, in regards to further naval combat, what about ships? Are ships going to be something that are going to be quite realistic to control, or are they going to be more, arcadey in the sense to make it simplistic? Will we have to have crew members, lower sails and raise sails, or will we just have to press W on our keyboard and left and right?
So, how complex is our ship thing going to be?
I think we're interested in moving that in the direction of potentially a profession, right? That players might be able to advance in regards to specific abilities that relate to seafaring activities. Treasure finding and underwater adventuring, and then, gosh, the stupid thing.
He was talking a little bit more about the actual mechanics
the
of the ship. Whether it's going to be like a physics-based engine or if it's going to be more arcadey.
Got it.
Physics is always really tough, right? And especially in an MMO, physics becomes even harder because you have to worry about, making sure all the clients can see what the physics are doing at the same time. So we will probably do a sort of simulation of those physics. We're not going to have wind speed and tacking and kind of really technical sailing.
Right, because ultimately, when you start to include those aspects from a physical standpoint, that's when you may start cutting into performance issues on the player's end.
Yeah.
And we definitely don't want to do that. There's ways to simulate that, as you were describing, without actually including the hard physics of it being rendered.
Right.
And those types of things you may have seen, in other games that have. Sea-based stuff. You can have events that occur in the water that will affect the ships around it, but necessarily aren't physical-based.
Right.
You can have ships that move north and south faster than other ships or different directions, or time of day, or stuff like that, without actually having it be rendered out on a physics engine, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having a.
So yeah, we're gonna go for a simulated realism.
Okay, simulated. That's great. Yeah, good. So in regards to that, you mentioned there, is that possibly we'll see a naval class, a specific class for naval-based content?
I think a
Probably
naval
not
profession.
Class. It'll be more of a So it's kind of limited in scope, but allows you to sort of get better at sailing, or get better at supporting a ship,
Right.
or get better at firing your cannons.
Did you just reveal cannons?
I didn't actually. Did I?
That was not a word.
I'm sorry. I'm taking that away. Sorry.
The cannons shoot arrows.
Great.
No. It was accidental.
Sorry. Please don't fire me.
Don't worry, I think you're safe. So I think that what Jeff was trying to say is there are professions that relate to on-ship experiences. And that'll make you better at those things, and may even unlock different types of skills associated maybe with those professions.
Right.
Who knows? It's going to be pretty in depth. It'll be cool.
Yeah.
Now, I've been bombarded almost by the community about camera-based questions. Cameras this, cameras that. After watching some of the gameplay footage, or just generally cameras. Everyone's interested in cameras this week. I don't know why. But basically, want to know, what kind of camera options will we have? We'll be able to customize the cameras heavily. We'll be able to change the FA view. Can we change the zoom level? Can we have director's level cameras that we can see away from our character or zoom out quite far? Will we have, see things like NVIDIA Ansel technology, for example, being used and optimized?
I think our goal is to provide a lot of versatility when it comes to point of views and cameras and stuff like that, and I think the engine can help a little bit with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Unreal does cameras really easily and really well, but
that's kind of like the icing on the cake. And
yeah,
we're still making the cake.
It's more of a polish question.
Yeah.
When we get to that point and we really start nailing down what that experience is going to be like, we can better answer those questions. It's because it's really about polish at that point. We really want to make sure that we have the content to support that polish.
Right.
We want to have an awesome game,
Yeah.
then an awesome camera, not an awesome camera, then an awesome game. So the answer to that is we definitely want to give people as many options as they want. And Unreal will help us a lot in providing those options. Yeah. What those options will be, I don't know at this point.
Okay. Well, let's move on to PvP. Everyone loves talking about PvP, right? It's a contention point for sure. Now, in terms of open world PvP, this game seems to be very open world focused. However, you do have 1v1, 3v3, 5v5 arenas planned. And my question is, will that kind of detract from the open world aspect that you're promoting? I mean, why would someone go search for PvP when they can just instantly get PvP while staying inside the town?
That's a good question. I think that when asking that question, it's important to note that exactly what does our open world PvP entail? And one of our pillars, as we described, wasn't called PvP, it was called meaningful conflict. And the reason why it's meaningful is because you're going to accomplish certain things in the world relating to PvP that you will not be able to accomplish in the arena.
Right.
The arena is kind of like taking a break from the open world,
right.
Maybe testing certain builds of armor and weapons and just, having that conflict whenever you want to.
It's a one-off session-based thing,
exactly.
Right? Whereas the open world stuff is you're actually accomplishing something that's going to change the game forever.
Exactly.
You're fighting for a castle.
So what's at stake is much higher in the open world, and the arenas are going to be much more self-contained. You're also not going to probably get the scale that you're going to get in the open world that you would get in an arena.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's it's a totally different experience. I mean, in some games I've played, you call people arena junkies.
Yeah.
Right? And like,
I've been one.
Exactly. You're going to have those arena junkies want to participate in the open world events because there's consequence there. There's meaning there.
Right.
Castle sieges and the sieges against nodes, or the caravans, or collecting those rare resources and stuff like that, or guild wars that are going to be a matter of honor and have objectives and stuff like that. It's a completely different experience, and I think that the arena system will not detract from participation in those systems.
Right, and it's one of the reasons you might so why do we put arenas in if open world PvP is going to be so important? Well, it's because we want people to have options in the game. Like, you're not going to want to do open world PvP 100% of the time.
And those are the training
and
grounds.
not 100% of the people are going to want to do that 100% of the time.
And those arenas are training grounds, so to speak. I mean, I know that sometimes when I participate in arenas, there's obviously arena boards, and sometimes I wouldn't get up on those boards so high.
That's okay. It's okay.
I would still,
we still love you.
I would still participate in those events because I would want to hone my skills. I would want to play with different builds, different combinations, or whatever the deal may be. That was my training ground, And then when it mattered, I was out on the field.
Right.
But I was really mainly the speech guy. I would just give the the speech to rile the troops and
Charisma
stuff,
check.
right? And then I would run onto the field and get one shot. And okay, there's me. No, I'm just kidding. I was a beast.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have seen the infamous Stephen speech videos.
Oh yeah.
Moving on from that, I'm going to ask you a question about lore, and I have asked you this question so many times I've probably lost count at this point. But do we have a name for your world yet? The world that your residents will refer to it as?
Fort Knox. I'm the Fort Knox of our lore.
He is.
And they just constantly come with these arrows trying to peg at the wall, and it's just like.
Nope.
All will be revealed when you. So, name of the world. That's a great question. I mean, we have a very specific schedule when we want to start releasing some setting lore. Right. Setting lore is a little bit different than story. Obviously, we really don't want to ever reveal story until you get in there and get to experience that story. But when it comes to the lore of the setting and why you're here and what has happened in the past to bring you here, knowledge that you should know when you first step through that portal, that's kind of stuff that I think we have a very scheduled plan to release that stuff. And it's close.
That's close.
It's soon trademarked.
Soon.
Right.
TM.
Soon. TM.
Soon TM.
I will eternally wait for the lore. Right.
So we keep you on the hook. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Right, so moving on from this, I noticed, in some of your streams, especially with Agellas quite recently, that you wanted to, keep your lore quite secret, but at the same time you said you wanted to turn your lore into a franchise. And I find the fact that you said that specific word insinuates several different things. Because a franchise is not just a single game. A franchise sort of expands beyond just the game. It goes into merchandising, books, all kinds of things, including other games.
Yes.
So do you have any plans in that sort of regard for franchising?
Okay, so me personally, I'm of the opinion that this story that we're bringing to life with Ashes of Creation is a very in-depth one. It has a lot of different aspects to it, and I personally, when diving into creating Intrepid Studios and bringing Ashes of Creation to life with this awesome team here, I knew from the get-go that this was going to be a franchise. I knew that this IP we were creating with Ashes of Creation is going to be revealed in many different ways and have a lot of different components that people can just eat up.
Yeah.
And I want to do that with a lot of different aspects, not just Ashes of Creation. But it's important to note, Ashes of Creation is the flagship, the dedicated, get this right, this is what we're bringing to market to represent the story that will have a greater franchise, and you're going to see an amazing MMORPG out of our story.
Right. And then once that happens,
Exactly.
then we move on to those
Right.
other products that we're considering. We've actually had discussions about it in our studio about things that we want to do, because there's all sorts of part of the story that we can't really tell in the MMO. You know, there's timelines that are occurring,
Right.
you know, in multiple different places that we want to focus on, we want to be able to tell, but we can't just tell within this one game. So
And there are heroes and villains that
Yeah.
we want to focus on and stuff like that, you know, that want to have their story told, but not
Right.
necessarily can be told in the MMORPG.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that I've always been told as a writer, is to always tell the story of the most interesting time of your characters' lives. And we've got so many different characters, we've got so much time to
Right.
cover, we can't do that. Right now, Ashes of Creation is the most interesting story we can tell.
Absolutely.
But then there are plenty of other stories that are great, and I think you guys are going to want to hear once we get to that point. So
And the greater the franchise, the more it feeds back into the MMORPG. Right? So like, this is a full scope project, you know, that is going to entail all those different facets.
Good. Does that mean we're going to see a Dungeons and Dragons Ashes of Creation like edition?
Nice.
That'd be awesome.
that would be awesome.
Done that.
That would be awesome.
Hey, there's a divide though. Is it Pathfinder or D&D?
Oh, don't even. We don't need to get into this debate.
Put my vote
I'm not
for
going to take
Dungeons and
sides there.
Dragons
Not going to
guys.
take sides.
Right. Okay. So I've like watched through a lot of the Q&As. I've been playing catch up this week to try and review like all the content, so I haven't asked any repeat questions. And I almost felt sad for a certain group of players recently, because no one has actually asked any questions for the role players. And I know that you, Stephen, yourself are quite a role player, and I know Bard from here as, you know, excessive EverQuest roleplay.
Excessive.
I did hear him say that.
Excessive.
I would say the exact amount. The appropriate amount.
Just the
yeah.
right.
He
yeah.
enjoys his roleplay content, you know, he really does like that aspect. So, you know,
That's true.
what kind of elements will you have available for role players to tell their stories, to, you know, show their love for RP, how they can express themselves using in-game mechanics and functions? What will you offer them?
Well, I think that something that's pretty cool about what we're doing here at Ashes of Creation is we're expanding outside of just your typical adventuring class kind of progression in the game, and we're including things like the utility aspect. In addition to utility, we're also going to include different social interactions and abilities and skills that are going to be possible, like potentially musical playing with different instruments, and or dance and storytelling, and having those Easter eggs out in the world for role players to kind of interact with. And
It's one of the reasons why we're putting in the social buildings to begin
Right,
with.
yes.
We wanted to make sure that there are spaces that players can gather and tell those stories, and to share those community experiences, and then to also like affect the game too, right?
Right.
We want somebody to go hang out at an inn, to go maybe find some player-generated quests,
Right.
to like eat some food that somebody else created for them, to spend a couple minutes there, and then have other people gather
and
there
have
as
that
well.
food mean something too, because
Right.
it took something for that player to make that plate you're eating.
Right.
Right? Like they had to harvest the potatoes and you know, cull the sheep and get the meat and stuff like that, and then now here's your plate of food, but it means nothing in other games or
Right,
something.
right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Like here we want players from, you know, not just a role playing perspective, but yeah, it's going to relate to role playing, to own a part of their identity. If you're a shopkeep, if you're an innkeeper or a cook or a chef, it's not
Or
just
if you
another
run a dance hall, or if
yes,
you know,
a theater, you know,
Yeah.
whatever the deal may be. These are components that lend to the RPG aspect of the game.
Right.
You know, it's one thing to make an MMO; it's another thing to play towards that RPG. And I think, you know, role players play an important part of bringing RPG to life for a lot of different players.
And like just, I mean, nodes too. Like when you're a citizen or you're in the government, you know, you're forming your own pocket communities that, I mean, the role players I think are really going to take advantage of to, you know, make their own identity there.
Absolutely.
Good, yeah. Now, I'm going to take full advantage of the fact that you haven't been vetting these questions, and that's a great thing for me.
Oh no!
Regarding
Sorry, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Yeah, we're at 350 right now.
And have a great day.
So regarding pay to win, a very special subject for Stephen here, and we know that you advocate a very anti-pay to win stance, and you know that yourself that you are extremely against the concept of pay to win, and you've had very bad experiences with several different MMOs and companies behind them. So my question is, what happens when Intrepid themselves faces ultimate financial ruin? What happens when the subscription numbers, the cosmetic cash ups are no longer enough to support your game and future content? How would Intrepid respond to a situation like that?
Financial ruin?
Oh my goodness!
So dire.
Let's edit these questions. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so first of all, if Intrepid Studios comes into issues with the game, which I think is very prevalent. We have it over the past 2 weeks. We have a very great interest, and we have the ability to deliver. But aside from that, if ever it were to be the case that the game were on financial hard times, I don't think throwing garbage at the game would help us, right? Which is what pay to win is.
I mean, it's if you think about what happens there, right? Like if our game is already doing badly, that means we've done badly on the design side. That means we have not provided to players the game that they want to play. And by throwing pay to win at that as a way to grab money doesn't help. That accelerates the death of the game. So I mean,
we would have to take a